I want to tell you my secret now. I see dead people.
M. Night Shyamalan burst into Hollywood superstardom with his third hit film, The Sixth Sense, and it had to be hard. To most of the public, this was their introduction to M. Night Shyamalan. And he made not only a competent film, but probably one of the best supernatural horror dramas of all time. It was such a cultural hit, people and news outlets were referring to him as the next Steven Spielberg. Yes, he made one good movie, and he's being compared to Steven Spielberg. He follows that movie up with another Bruce Willis feature, Unbreakable. And although the critics and audiences didn't gravitate towards this film as they did its predecessor, I think it has more to do with the marketing of the movie than anything else. I recall it seemed like it was going to be another supernatural horror type film. I also recall before the movie coming out, everyone was talking about, I wonder what the twist is going to be. I wonder what the twist is going to be. I can't wait to find out the twist. Because the twist ending in The Sixth Sense became everything M. Night Shyamalan was known for. So people were expecting a twist ending for Unbreakable. I remember leaving the theater and actually liking Unbreakable a lot more than my friends did. Specifically, one friend hated it so much when I was trying to say anything positive about the movie, he just shut me down completely and said it was a garbage and a waste of 2 hours of his time. And although its ending was definitely lackluster, not that Mr. Glass was the bad guy, but that freeze frame where we are told what happens between David and Mr. Glass instead of actually seeing what happens. It's pretty pathetic. After that, he followed up with his third film, Signs, a movie where everyone talks like an asshole.
Been watching these reports since morning. I have seen 12 soda commercials so far. 12!
I've had 2 separate folks tell me there have been strangers around these parts last couple nights. Can't tell what they look like, because they're staying in the shadows, covert-like. Nobody's been hurt, mind you, and that's the giveaway.
What's happening?
The dogs are barking. Woke us up.
Are you hurt?
I think God did it.
Old Mrs. Kendallman twisted her ankle, as she puts it, diving for her life when a bunch of school kids rode down the sidewalk on skateboards. She went down to Thornton's store this morning and started spitting on the new skateboards. Spitting!
Don't get me wrong, Signs is a decent film, but the dialogue is truly cringe. After that, it was all downhill for a while, and I don't think I watched another M. Night Shyamalan movie until The Visit, which led me to his IMDb, where I discovered that in Hollywood, you truly can fail upward. After Signs' mediocre success, M. Night followed that up with failure after failure after failure after failure after failure. In any other field, he would have been shunned ages ago. So I thought to myself, well, I kind of avoided a lot of these movies back when they came out. Let me go back and take a look at these films and see if they're as truly as bad as I remembered or as people told me they were. So I watched every single M. Night Shyamalan movie, from The Sixth Sense to Knock at the Cabin. That's 13 films he's directed. And I sat through every single one of them, which led me to rank M. Night Shyamalan films from worst to best. Number 13, The Last Airbender. M. Night Shyamalan decided to shy away from his traditional style of directing and wanted to do something different. So he adapted the popular Nickelodeon television animated series, Avatar: The Last Airbender. The only problem with that is that he tried to take an entire season of Avatar: The Last Airbender and concise it down to 1 hour and 47 minutes. A television series that was very popular in 2005, and I guess maybe his kids were fans of the animated series because he wanted to direct it. And he did an absolute miserable job. This is the worst movie. Around 2009, somebody told me to watch these, that they were pretty good animated series, so I did. And I saw about the first 2 seasons or 3. I don't think the 4th one came out yet. And they were pretty good. I enjoyed it. You know, M. Night Shyamalan's known for directing children very well. He did it with every child actor he had, except for this film. This kid is the worst actor I've ever seen in my life. Besides that, he decided to change the whole Fire Nation into Indians. Now, I get it. India's in Asia, right? This is based on Asian mythology. The series is supposed to be based on Asian mythology, but that's not Zuko. That's Slumdog. That's not Zuko. Anyway, so he did that, which I didn't like, and then he cast these two kids to be the leading side characters to Aang. And they just look ridiculous. They don't look like they belong in the Water Nation anyway. All in all, this movie was the toughest one to get through so far. Honestly, this really was a torture because I was a fan of the animated show. Aang was a child. He was like carefree. He was a kid with the weight of the world on his shoulders. And in this movie, this kid can't act his way out of a paper bag. I don't feel like he's a joyful, loving kid. I don't think anyone got along with him at all. Also, the action scenes are filmed terribly. Now, I don't like shaky cam at all, and I hate when everything's too close you can't see anything, but this is ridiculous. The camera doesn't even move. Anyway, this hits number 13 because it's pure trash. This is the worst film of M. Night Shyamalan's entire career.
They want you to be their avatar.
Bitch, are you for real?
Number 12. After Earth. After the disaster that was The Last Airbender, M. Night Shyamalan decided to follow that up with a film that also wasn't his. Will Smith wanted a film to feature his son after the massive success that was The Karate Kid that took place in China, starred Jackie Chan, and it wasn't about karate, it was about kung fu. But anyway, since that was a huge success, they wanted to do another film. And they decided to do this, a science fiction film where humans have destroyed Earth, travel to another planet, inhabit it, but have to deal with aliens. Aliens that can sense people's fears. Will Smith is the only one, the only human that doesn't show signs of fear. And he becomes the prime commander. Jaden looks up to his daddy and wants to be just like his daddy, but he's an obnoxious asshole. He also talks like an asshole.
Sir, I am dedicated, have studied, and consistently display conduct becoming of a ranger, sir. I request that the commander reconsider his assessment, sir.
The dad.
Sir, my father's returning home tonight.
You tell your father that I said welcome home. Dismissed.
M. Night Shyamalan should have never decided to direct this film. It was one of the first films that's not really written by M. Night Shyamalan. He didn't adapt it. He is featured as a writer, but that doesn't mean anything. Will Smith is a writer, another guy's a writer, and so is M. Night. M. Night should not have directed this thing. Although, I will say there's some good visuals in this, and I figure he was picked to direct this because he's good at directing children, even though Last Airbender was the first time he failed at it. But he is known to work well with children and get the best performances out of them. Did not work here with Jaden Smith. But there are great visuals in this movie. I will say that. I won't knock it for that. But sometimes the CG looks a little bit cheesy. But all in all, it's a pretty campy action sci-fi film. Should have never been directed by M. Night Shyamalan. If Will Smith wanted to write a movie and have Jaden be featured in it, and he wanted it to be a science fiction film dealing with space and things like that, then he should have gotten somebody that wrote on Battlestar Galactica or Star Trek, The Next Generation, or Voyager, or Deep Space Nine. This could have been number 13, but the Avatar was based on property and he ruined it. And this one is not, and the visuals in this are a little bit better, so that's why this one gets a bump up. Number 11, Lady in the Water. After the critically panned film, The Village, M. Night Shyamalan decided to come back with a film that was originally a fairy tale he used to tell his children before they went to bed, and adapt it into a major motion picture. Lady in the Water tells the story of a narf who lives in the pool of an apartment complex in Philadelphia. Her mission is to speak to a writer who's going to write a prolific story. We don't know what the story is actually about, technically, but it's going to be so big and so great, it's going to inspire somebody to become president of the United States and change the world. And I think this is the most pretentious film out of his entire catalog of films. This is the one that's really just ridiculous. It's a fairy tale. In this story, he's saying everybody's special because everybody in the apartment complex has a role in helping the Narf travel to the other world. Also, there's a guy who just moved into this apartment complex who's kind of an asshole, and guess what? He's a movie critic. Yeah, I'm sure that had nothing to do with all the panned reviews he got for The Village. Nobody questions the sanity of the super, played by Paul Giamatti, who's convincing everybody that they need to help this Narf. I just get this arrogance from him watching this film, and it's just like, ugh, this is really, really? Yeah, well, this movie bombed. And this movie deserves his place as number 11, as one of the worst films. Definitely, I think definitely one of the worst films. This movie is this movie should be called, instead of called Lady in the Water, it should be called Subtext. It's just everything is subtext. It's just ugh. Number 10, The Village. I honestly don't think The Village is one of M. Night Shyamalan's worst films. The problem with this movie is actually the ending, the supposed twist ending. I guess he got so wrapped up into being this twist director that everything he always had to come up with a twist at the last 10 minutes of his films kind of hurt this movie. This movie is basically about love, hope, and faith. Pretty much. That's what this movie's about. You'd see that the elders have started this community out of hope. You see that Bryce Dallas Howard's character is willing to risk everything for love. She loves Joaquin Phoenix, and she's willing to risk everything to go travel to get him medicine so he could get better and not die. This movie really falls apart in the third act when it starts getting into the, like I said, the twist, or to the realization that there are no monsters out there. That the elders created this mythology that there are creatures out there, so this way the people of the town that they created wouldn't leave, and they'd be frightened to wander off, and they stay within the borders. And when you find out that it's all a myth and it's fake, it's kind of brings down everything else that was making the movie entertaining to begin with. I mean, it felt like it could have been a more interesting episode of The Twilight Zone or something like that if we would have just stayed in this continuity where we think it's the 1800s and we think these people, there are creatures out there, and we don't get to see what they are exactly or whatever, but they're terrorizing these people. And let's say this happened to, let's say Joaquin Phoenix's character does get stabbed, and then Bryce Dallas Howard has to go get medicine for him. It would have been more interesting going in that route instead of going in the route where, oh yeah, we're in the year 2004 and this town is all bullshit, and somehow we got the government not to fly over our wildlife preserve, because that's what this is. Just, it makes no sense whatsoever. That's really what brings down this movie, because besides that, it was an interesting love story with interesting characters. And I enjoyed it until the third act. The third act really brought this movie down. It's not a terrible movie. I'm not going to say this is shit or the worst thing he's ever done. This is pretty good. Really great actors working with him in this film. And the worst part is the last act. The last act brings it down for me completely, that this makes number 10. Number 9. The Happening. The Happening is actually very interesting in the concept of something, you don't know what it is, a chemical, a terrorist attack. Something's making people commit suicide randomly, out of nowhere, and it's only in this certain region of the United States of America that it's happening in. It was actually really intriguing for the most part. The movie starred Mark Wahlberg and Zooey Deschanel. Remember Zooey Deschanel, who's known for her beautiful blue eyes? Anyway, it was interesting enough. Although, technically, it's kind of like the Crazies, the original Crazies, George A. Romero's version. And then they kind of spoil it halfway into the damn movie, way before the third act even happens.
You know, plants have the ability to target specific threats. Tobacco plants, when attacked by Heliothis caterpillars, will send out a chemical attracting wasps to kill just those caterpillars. You don't know how plants attain these abilities. They just evolve very rapidly.
Which species do you think it's doing, and if you think it's true?
Plants have the ability to communicate with other species of plants. Trees can communicate with bushes, bushes with grass, and everything in between.
So now we know what it is, and how are we supposed to be scared? Why don't they decide to travel to, I don't know, someplace like Arizona? It was interesting enough for the most part, but honestly, once we were revealed that the plants are the ones killing everyone, then there's no more mystery to it, so it kind of like drops the ball. And when I say it resembles the crazies, it's also because there are signs that someone's infected with whatever this is because they start acting somewhat crazy. Honestly, though, the best thing to come out of this movie was Mark Wahlberg reverting back to his Dirk Diggler acting persona and speaking in that soft-spoken voice.
Their group was larger than ours. This thing has been escalating all day. Smaller and smaller populations have been setting this off. They react to human stimulus. Maybe people are setting off the plants?
What are you saying? That guy was crazy. We have to save them.
They're already dead.
And the meme before memes were popular.
Plan on murdering me in my sleep?
What? No.
All in all, it kept you interested enough, even after it's spoiled, that there's no more mystery to the film. We know what it is. It's not a terrorist attack. It's not a chemical in the water. It's the plants. Entertaining enough to give it the number 9 spot. Surprisingly, watching this all over again, this was not the worst, which I thought it was going to be the worst movie out of all of his, especially with dialogue like this.
We're packing hot dogs for the road. You know, hot dogs get a bad rap. They got a cool shape. They got protein. You like hot dogs, right?
Number 8. Old. Now, this is another movie where the third act just falls flat. But the rest of the movie is so good that it elevates it to number 9. But honestly, technically, thinking about it, this could switch places with The Village at any moment, because both of these suffer from the same thing as the third act. Mostly this suffers from the last 10 minutes again. The last 10 minutes of this movie, it's like the movie does not know what it wants to do. In the case of Old, this island does do something where it transforms you and ages you rapidly. Interesting concept. It was great. The kids growing old real quick, getting pregnant because they fell in love. The older women dying because they're aging so quickly. The couple that were having trouble with their relationship and that they grow old together while they're there trying to survive. This movie is very good when it gets to that part. Even when it gets to the creepier aspects of it, the psychological areas, it's very good. It's very interesting and very intriguing film and quite fun until the third act, when they don't know where they want to go or how he doesn't know how he wants to end the movie. Instead of doing it the right way, if he complains, he claims to be he claims to be an admirer of Alfred Hitchcock and directors like this. Well, guess what? Those directors normally ended their movies not on a happy note. In this movie, we couldn't just end the movie with the 2 youngest kids growing old and dying on that island and not being fed. What else is going on there? Just that maybe that these are like sacrifices that the resort takes people. They sacrifice them that are sick into this island, and that's it. No, we have to get into. It's a pharmaceutical company that's working on this and that, and that this is all a big conspiracy. And I get it. A lot of people say, well, if it would have ended like that, people would have hated the movie. I understand. I do grasp that. Today's audiences need to be spoon-fed every single thing. They can't just go home being, oh, there's no hope. Oh, it's miserable. No, you have to give them something. But honestly, the end of this movie, it's like M. Night Shyamalan didn't even know what he wanted to give them. So he gives them a little bit of this. Then he goes, they get out. Okay, we do a little bit of that. And then we're going to do a little bit of this. That's why this is number 8. And it doesn't mean it's a bad movie. It's actually one of his better films. So take it for what it's worth. This is just my ranking. Number 7. The Visit. This movie is pretty straightforward, and it's high up on the list because it got entertaining near the end. So 2 kids are going to visit their grandparents who they've never met before in their lives because back in the day, the mother slapped her mother, and then her father slapped her since she ran away, never to speak to her parents ever again. So now they want to meet their grandchildren. So the mother finally agrees to send them off to meet their grandparents, while the mom goes on vacation with her new boyfriend. Then we discover that the grandparents are acting a little bit strange. It's like they're not normal. Something's wrong with them. Only to discover something later on in the third act. And this is the first M. Night Shyamalan movie where the third act is actually the best part of the entire film. For the most part, I liked the girl, didn't have a problem with her. I hated this kid, and actually there's something that happens to him at the end of the movie that I was kind of cheering when it happened. All in all, I like this movie. I enjoyed it. I think it's one of M. Night Shyamalan's better ones. The only thing is, it's supposedly like a found footage movie, yet it's not a found footage movie. I get it. The kids are documenting the first time meeting their grandparents, or one of the daughters is, or the older daughter is, but it's opens up with it being written and directed by M. Night Shyamalan. So it's like, what's going on here? Maybe if they pretended like the girl directed this herself, and at the end we got the credits, that would have been fine. But instead, at the end credits, we get the fucking brother rapping. You know, that was awful. This kid's got, look, the kid's not a bad actor, but that rapping thing, I hope he's not serious because, jeez Louise. All in all, this actually wasn't a terrible movie. It was just boring for a majority of the beginning, and then it gets good. So that's why it's at number 7. Number 6. Knock at the Cabin. I like this movie a lot. It tells the story of a same-sex married couple who's spending their vacation time with their adopted daughter at a cabin that they rented a year ago. They would always visit every summer. And all of a sudden, this strange man comes up to their daughter and tries to make friends with her and tells her that he feels really bad about what he has to do today. And he has friends with him. Well, they're not his friends, they're his associates. And that they have to ask something grave of this couple because the fate of the world depends on it. It's basically, they're the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, and they're coming there to tell them, listen, one of you have to sacrifice yourselves in order to save the rest of humanity. Which one will do it? And of course, they don't believe them, and they don't want to do it. And no matter how much proof they show them, they still don't want to do it. Honestly, when I think about this movie more and more, I go, wow, M. Night Shyamalan really did a really, really good job. And maybe this should be even higher on my list than it is, but he also did a good job in these other films. But this movie's really done well. I mean, how would you react if 4 strangers come to your cabin in the middle of the woods, in the middle of nowhere, try to enter and tell you that they have to talk to you, that you have to let them in, break in, or threatening you, basically, without threatening you, but being real nice about it, and trying to come in, and then you see that the guy is 6 foot something, Dave Bautista. Great casting choice, too, because he's like Lenny of Mice and Men. That's what he reminds me of. A big, gentle giant. And that's how he portrays himself. And this is such a great casting choice for everybody in this film, to be honest with you. It was a really good movie, actually. I really enjoyed this movie a lot. And I guess what? I like the ending. It's dour and somber and depressing. Because it's almost like The Mist in a sense, because, you know, The Mist, remember that movie? It has a terrible ending where you're like, oh no. Well, this one has a terrible ending when you're like, oh, it's not a twist. It is what it is. It is what it is. But you're happy that it was what it was. I liked it. I love this ending. I like this movie a lot. That's why it makes number 6. It was debatable where it could be because, it's hard. This is a good M. Night Shyamalan movie, in my opinion. This is like one of his better ones. This is really hard between 6 and 5. Number 5. Glass. The world M. Night Shyamalan built in 2000 with Unbreakable ended up coming back in a movie called Split. And now we get the conclusion of this trilogy. And it's sad that he made it into his own trilogy, to be honest, because this is the conclusion, the end. And you don't really look at it as a trilogy because it was never designed to be one, but it ended up being that way. And it works pretty well, except for the third act again. There's things in this movie that I dislike, but I liked a majority of this entire movie. I liked that finally David and the Horde are together, and Mr. Glass is unbelievably maniacally insane and intelligent and masterminds this whole epic showdown while they're being locked up in this insane asylum. And it's just a really solid movie. Again, the only reason why it's 6 is because the third act, I don't like the conspiracy theory that there are people behind the corner that are really controlling everything. Yeah, they're controlling everything so much that when people are at a restaurant and they're eating, they leave, all of a sudden they lock the doors and everybody stands up. That is part of this secret society with clover leaves on their hand. And even the bartender. The bartender is also part of this secret society. And I'm just like, get the out of here. Now, that was a little bit disappointing. But all in all, there's not a twist. It's something that is revealed in all trilogies. In a trilogy, normally, in the third film, something's revealed that you didn't know that you thought you knew about the original. And it's perfect. This one did, M. Night Shyamalan did a really good job in this movie. Honestly, the only thing that sucks is that it's the end. It's a really good conclusion to 2 really good movies, and it's a good movie itself. Number 4. Signs. Signs is M. Night Shyamalan's 3rd major motion picture release. He did have 2 prior to The Sixth Sense, which would make this number 5, but for everybody else, this is number 3. And it was a really good movie. It's really about faith and trying to regain your faith. It's not about aliens, although the alien invasion is the backdrop. Mel Gibson's character is a former reverend who has quit being a reverend after a tragic accident took his wife's life. And now he's trying to raise his 2 kids with his brother, Merle, alone. All of a sudden, a crop circle starts showing up on his property, and he's hearing rumors that this is happening in some other places, and someone else's dog was acting aggressively out of the blue, and then his dog starts acting aggressively too, and it's aliens invade Earth, and it was cool, and it came out. It was interesting. People really enjoyed this movie. I really enjoyed this movie. It's a good movie. I did say they talk like assholes because I guess he was trying something new with dialogue, like, I'll make all my characters quirky or something. But at the end of it all, it is about faith, and it does hit you over the head with it at the end. In the third act, it's like, bam, he smashes it over your head. Like, yeah, this is what it's really about. This is what Signs is really about. The signs. Don't miss the signs, you know? So, yeah, but it was a good movie, all in all. It was entertaining. I would have liked it a little bit more if at the third act, when the aliens are trying to get into the house, that it was more like a Night of the Living Dead type thing, where there's a bunch of aliens and they're trying to stay in the house, and maybe that cop was there with them too, and somebody else, you know. But all in all, it is a good movie, even though there are some stupid stuff in it. Like I said, the dialogue, and also the fact that the aliens would come to invade a planet that's 90% water. I mean, there's something that they're allergic to. That's ridiculous. But it is an enjoyable film, and I like it. It still holds up till today, so that's why it's number 4. Number 3, Split. All I can say about Split necessarily is that it's one of the best films M. Night Shyamalan has ever made, and it took him a long time to make it. After a lot of failures, he came up with this film, which in theory and execution, it seemed kind of schlock. Thank God he got the right actors, because if he had the wrong actors, this could have been a failure. But James McAvoy is absolutely incredible as Kevin Wendell Crump, a man who has 24 different personalities, although we only see 4. We see some on videos, but we only know about 4 of them. And the idea is a little bit campy, but it works with the twist ending, which wasn't really a twist ending, but then you're like, oh, it works. It works because of that. If it wasn't for that, it wouldn't work. But it's such a good movie. Anna Taylor-Joy is absolutely incredible in this movie. She's the girl from Witch. She is amazing. She's beautiful. She's sympathetic. You know there's something different about this girl than the other 2 girls that get locked up with her, because the way she thinks, the way she acts. And then you see some stuff about her past, and you're really fucking pissed off. And then you're kind of mad that it doesn't get resolved in the end of this movie. But all in all, the acting is superb. It works very well because of the ending. Honestly, it could have been schlocky. Really, honestly, this is one of the best films. I remember seeing the trailer and thinking, oh, I don't know. It looks interesting. It looks scary. It looked like, but once you hear M. Night Shyamalan, you know it's not going to be gory and it's not going to be that scary. This one looked like it could be scary, but it wasn't going to be gory. And it was interesting, the idea of just the girls being held captive and this guy being crazy, and you know one of his personalities was crazier than the other ones. It was like maybe a serial killer. Like that was the idea from the trailer I got. Like, oh my God, that's an amazing idea. Really, really is an amazing idea. And thank God he came up with this. And then he had a little twist about, you know what it is, the Horde. But then it just concludes to a beautiful symphony at the end, which just wrapped up everything nice in a little bow for the next movie. But yeah, this is a great film. I really love Split a lot. It's one of my favorites of M. Night Shyamalan, and that's why it's number 3. Number 2, Unbreakable. In the year 2000, 2 comic book movies came out. One, the adapted X-Men, which everyone was going crazy for, and then an original one that was never published in comics. It was just made into a movie, and it was called Unbreakable. I'm pretty sure a lot of people went into this movie not knowing what to expect at all, thinking it was going to be another suspense thriller drama like The Sixth Sense. But instead, what we got was a amazing story about a man named David Dunn who finds himself a victim of a terrible terrorist attack. He's on a train with a bunch of people headed back home to Philadelphia, because it's always Philadelphia with M. Night Shyamalan, when the train is derailed and everybody dies except for him. And then he later receives a note that asks him the simple question, how many times have you ever been sick? When he starts to think about it, he can't remember the last time he was ever sick in his entire life. First off, we meet also Mr. Glass, who actually opens up the movie. It's about him a bit more than it is about David, because the movie opens up with Mr. Glass being born and him being terribly disfigured because when he was coming out of the birth canal, he broke bones and everything, and the doctor thinks that they dropped him, and they didn't. And he's in severe pain, and all his life he suffers from this rare disease where his bones break very easily. He's very fragile. So somehow along the way, he gets introduced into comic books. His mom buys him one, and he becomes fascinated with this, and he thinks that there has to be somebody out there that's the exact opposite of himself. Somebody that doesn't get sick, somebody that's invincible, somebody that's super strong, somebody that doesn't have his problems. And at the end, we discover that he set up this whole motion to find this person by killing many, many, many people. He's a sick man. And this is great. This was a great comic book movie that we didn't know was a comic book movie. It wasn't advertised as a comic book movie. It was advertised as something totally different, like a mystery. Oh, well, how did he survive? Oh, what's wrong? What's going on? It's, nobody knew what to expect. And then when we got what we got, it was a very enjoyable film. Looking back on this movie, it still holds up till today. It's a very good movie, highly enjoyable, it still holds up, and the only reason why it's number 2 is because the ending was a little bit lackluster. That freeze frame is just ridiculous. But it's still a great movie, and I highly enjoy it. Number 1. The Sixth Sense. I'm sorry to say, but this is the best film he's ever made. And I'm only sorry to say it because it was like the introduction to M. Night Shyamalan. Yes, he directed 2 films before this one, but this was his first mainstream film. And it was a hit. It was a global phenomenon. It did not do well critically, I don't believe, when it first was released. But I don't know, maybe it's just the late 90s that everyone was like, oh my God, what a twist. And the same thing with Scream at the end of Scream when we found out it was 2 killers. You were like, whoa. But yeah, back in the day, that was it. But that's not the only thing that makes this movie great. It's not that little twist at the end, because I know a lot of people that seen the movie and they go, oh, I knew it. It sucked because I knew he was a ghost the entire time. No, the movie's great because it's a well-written movie. It's really good. The movie is about this little boy named Cole Sear who sees dead people. And he's scared, and everyone calls him a freak, and they look down upon him, and the only person he really cares about that doesn't want him to look that way is his mom. And he tries his best for her not to think of him as a freak. Bruce Willis stars as Malcolm Crowe. Malcolm is a psychiatrist who dealt with this kind of situation prior and didn't do a good job. So much so that the guy that he tried to help when the guy was younger, he thought just was suffering from some mental illnesses, and he came back and took revenge on him and took his life. Then we see that Malcolm's marriage is struggling, and the only thing he has going for is this little boy Cole. And he wants to help this boy Cole because he couldn't help the other kid, Vincent Gray, who was played by Donnie Wahlberg. Didn't know that was Donnie Wahlberg at the time. I don't think anybody knew that was Donnie Wahlberg at the time. He transformed himself. Anyway, so throughout the film, Cole sees dead people and they scare him because he doesn't know what to do, and they attack him. But Malcolm suggests maybe they just want you to help them. Maybe they want to tell you something. Maybe they need your help to cross over to the other side. And with that, Cole decides to help one of the spirits, and he realizes that, yeah, that's all they really wanted. And he's not scared anymore. And he's willing to tell his mom what he sees. And then Malcolm goes home to speak to his wife to make amends because their relationship's on the rocks, only to discover, for him to realize himself, that he is dead, that he's a ghost. All in all, it holds up all the way from Act 1 to Act 3. The twist, forget about the twist. You could even go in knowing that he's a ghost, and it's still a good movie. It's really great. And it's rough. That has to be rough for M. Night Shyamalan, that your first film, your first mainstream film, is the best film you've ever made. And I tried going into this to look at this and be like, no, this is not the best one. And it is. It holds up. It's great. It's a good movie. It's one of the best ghost movies out there. And I mean, like ghost films like Ghost with Patrick Swayze, or like Beetlejuice, like that. Those are good ghost films. This is one of them. This is probably number one. Anyway, this has been me ranking M. Night Shyamalan's top 13 films. I know he has 15, but I only did the 13 Hollywood films. Let me know what you think about my list. Did I get anything wrong? Should one be somewhere else where it shouldn't? Leave it in the comment section down below. This was a long video. I will talk to you guys next time. Peace.